8 fundraising, powerful fundraising concepts. These aren't weak ones. These aren't the last ones. These are important ones. These are powerful ones. Number 1, someone spoke to this. What's major gift fundraising about, and what do we need to be about as a university is face-to-face engagement. That's what makes a weekend like this so valuable, is that you're together, you're interacting. It's so powerful, isn't it, when you're looking at each other eyeball to eyeball, knee to knee, and having conversations that really matter about Lincoln University as well as yourselves. So the president has to be the point on this in driving this kind of engagement. Here's the thing, you can raise money, and you do raise money, through mail, through telephone, through galas, through golf. But you raise the significant money not through those. You raise significant money through interpersonal engagement. There's no shortcuts, guys. You've got to be engaged. How you structure that, we can talk about some ideas as we go, and certainly afterwards, but you need to be all about it. And there's no shortcut. You know, some of our biggest gifts at the university, I'll talk about one in a minute, 15 years in the making. 15 years in the making, 15 years, 5 years with the chancellor. I joined 10 years of my initiatives. We're looking at something truly spectacular, monumental for our university. Fingers crossed. Secondly, there we go. There's 3 kinds of giving, and this is worth appreciating as background to what we're doing. There's what we call annual, and that's where what we describe, mailing, telephoning, events like galas and golf, really help bring money into the institution. And those tend to be more modest gifts, though on occasion they can be, you know, incredibly significant, but they matter. They matter. The second kind is what we call special gifts. And special gifts, or major gifts, are gifts for a particular purpose more often than not, and larger in size. At UMSL, we consider $25,000 and greater to be a major gift, a special gift. That may not be the case with your institution, depending upon, you know, your growth trajectory. Maybe you start at $10,000. Or maybe 5. You know, you would have to tell me. You define it by your support, my friends. You define it by your support. And then deferred giving. This has to do with gifts that come out of one's estate, typically. We have a number of insurance policies that our donors have given to us, paid in full. And we have many promises in wills and so on. And of course, those can be changed. Those can be changed if a donor falls out of, or if the university were to fall out of favor with the donor. But by and large, the continuity has been very, very impressive. And oftentimes, the reason deferred gifts are important is because that can be the largest gift someone makes of all their years of philanthropy. Right? Cash flow, sometimes it's hard to take it out of the cash flow, but you can direct it out of the estate and have a great, great impact. Now, of course, you got to die, would you? You got to die. I don't want to hurry anybody along. Let's go to the next slide. Gift begets gifts and stories. Stories of gifts, I mean to say. So gifts beget gifts. What we found at the University of Missouri St. Louis, and during the course of my years previously, is that a large gift prompts other large gifts. So the UMSL fundraising history slide we looked at a few slides ago, when we began that campaign, there was $3 million or more gifts to the campaign, 3 of them. When I arrived, and with the help of people I hired, we created a category. It was called the Gateway for Greatness campaign, and we created a category called Partners for Greatness, which started at $1 million. So in the first 3 years, 3 7-figure gifts. In the next 4 years, 28 more. 28 more. 28 more. Remember, I started, it's about a relentless pursuit. 28 more. For UMSL, $1 million is just an incredible amount of money, and it still is, believe me. But 28 more. And why? How did we do that? We used one gift to prompt the next gift. We went to see a corporate executive, and we'd bring like a significant volunteer and our chancellor and I, and we would go and have breakfast or go to their office. What I was able to say, and usually I was the one who used this particular piece, is talk about, well, XYZ Corporation, ABC Corporation, and DEF Corporation, they've all come in at $1 million, $1.25 million, $1.5 million. What did that do? It created what I call a floor. Okay, it created a floor. And of course we mentioned there would be recognition and so on, describe that for them. That, both in terms of businesses, foundations, and individuals, was amazing. So you got to get your first to get your second, and your third, your fourth, your 28th. So I mentioned establishing floors. Partners for Greatness did that for us. That worked really, really well. But Partners for Greatness was a campaign function. It was a campaign device, if you will. And on July 1st, 2012, that campaign ended. So what were we to do? Well, I spent a great deal of time thinking and talking with my staff about this. And then we went and engaged with community members, significant donors, both corporate and alumni and friends, with a concept. And they all bought in. And the concept as we created, and I think I would recommend this to you, is a series of milestones for the Auguste Chateau Society. There was the 100,000, which was the only recognition number that had to be achieved for donors. We created milestones. We added 250, 500, $1 million, 2.5, 5, and 10. Now the 10 was absolutely aspirational, but we knew we had folks with the capacity to deliver. So it's on our documentation. And what that has done, not even being in the campaign, is it continues to stimulate higher levels of giving for those who have the capacity, And we have an event we call the Founders Event. And the Founders Event, when I got there, the fall of 2008, I went through the Founders Event, and it was a pretty good event. But what occurred to me was, this has got to change. And we changed it. We recognized alumni in a very significant way. And we also had donors who were Auguste Chateau Society members, new or continuous, when they would reach milestones. We didn't ask for any money. In fact, we had a net loss for this event. But I tell you what, we have not had a net loss. Because what it's done is you bring somebody up on the stage. This literally happened. And this gentleman and his wife, the gentleman was the graduate of the university, they went to $500,000. So afterwards, a fellow, another alum, said, they're at $500,000? I can get to $500,000. I got to do it in 2 steps, Martin. And that has happened time and time again. Large gifts are catalytic. Next slide. A little bit about, let's say, the process. If you start on the top, we look at identification. We have to identify what donors we're going to focus on. We can't focus upon the full universe of potential donors. We'll talk about that in a moment, how to winnow it down. But we start with identifying a donor or a potential donor for a particular need we have in mind, or an aspiration. We qualify them, that's by engagement, by observation, by appropriating more information about their giving to other organizations and so on. We cultivate them, again, we spend time with them, and this can be fairly brief, but we spend time with them, we include them in all of our events of various kinds on the campus, and I'm sure Lincoln Light comes, so there's a lot going on. And then we solicit. And we we ask for a specific amount of money. We don't say, could you help us? We ask for a specific amount of money. And then once the gift is closed, we recognize them through good stewardship. We continue to engage with them, and we continue to recognize them. If you would go on. Thank you. Oh, before, come back, I'm sorry. I missed one very important thing. See that word in the middle? What is that word? There's no shortcuts to this. And who owns the time? Does the university own the time? The donors own the time. Time belongs to the donor. And what we have to do when we do this kind of qualification is we come to understand the time factors in their lives. They're young and building a business. They may have high potential, but they're preoccupied building that business. Not that they're not living well, but they're not at a point to do great philanthropy. We have to understand, appreciate the complexities in their lives. They may be caring for a loved one that's quite expensive and is a preoccupation and a drain or a challenge for them financially because they want to help. There's all kinds of things that help us ask for the right money at the right time. And we can impact time. We impact time by talking about the campaign. We impact time by what's urgent. We impact time by asking them to support at the end of the calendar year, which many donors make their significant philanthropic contributions at calendar year end. And we also use the end of our fiscal year. So we're all us fundraisers are running around like crazy this month as we're running out of time, trying to get donors' time aligned with our time, if you can follow all those times. But stewardship and recognition. When I first got into the work, the thing I loved the most was the solicitation and getting the gift. I loved the chase. I loved the chase. I loved the working with the donors, engaging them, getting them excited about the university, and deciding, I'm in, I buy in, I want to do something of greater significance. I loved that. I'd come back from a call when someone gave us a signed document, and I would call my people together and we would have 3 cheers. And same with our other fundraisers. It was really important for us. But what I've come to understand, particularly over my 10 years at the University of Missouri St. Louis, is that the most powerful thing in this cycle isn't the solicitation and the giving of the gift. It's the stewardship that follows. It's the appropriate recognition that we provide that it's just so powerful. Why is that? There's been studies done about this. Without getting into the chemistry, biochemically, there's a transformation that happens within someone when they make a gift of greater significance. It has to do with what's kind of in the vernacular called the love enzyme, the family bonding enzyme. Think about that. If you don't like a family member, you're bound to them, aren't you? You're bound to them. The bonding enzyme. You're with them through thick or thin. Now, I've watched donors who have made these gifts of greater significance countless times, who thereafter, they're like the biggest cheerleaders you could ever hope for. They attend everything. Many of them start giving gifts more to this place and that place within the institution. What do you need, Martin? What do you need, Chancellor George? We want to be helpful. And it's just wonderful to see that kind of profound connection that takes place for donors. It's profound because donors who make large gifts deserve to feel that way. It's better to give than receive. We know who said that a couple thousand years ago. It's better to give than receive. And there comes that reward. It's intangible in that sense, but it's very real, this profound attachment. I want to give you 2 examples. Recognition belongs to the donor too. We want to recognize donors because we want to honor them, we want to celebrate their commitment to our institution, and by elevating their generosity, as I said before, it challenges others to do likewise. And here's, I think, an interesting example with a married couple, with a corporation, and 2 very different approaches to recognition. I don't know how much of this you can see, but What we've created is a graph, and up the middle, publicity, more publicity to the left, more anonymity to the right. And what we have here is from donor to donor, there's somewhere on this graph. High publicity, low publicity. High anonymity, lower anonymity. And these are things we're challenged by, and they also create opportunities for us. So Emerson and UMSL. Emerson Corporation sits in Ferguson, Missouri, just a couple of minutes from the tragic occurrence with Michael Brown. And David Farr, the CEO of Emerson, said, we've got to respond, we've got to do something. And they went to a number of organizations and made investments. And they came to UMSL. And what we arrived at was $1.5 million scholarship program at $300,000 a year, aimed at students in what we call North County here in St. Louis, which is, a significant African American population. So they wanted to go right in, and what they believed was education was the best antidote, as we know, most of us from experience, to bring people out of poverty, to bring people out of behaviors that you wish none of us would exercise. And so they made that commitment. Well, this was important to Emerson. They wanted the whole world to know. So one of the things they did, and they paid for it, is we created this ad which covered the full back page of the giving guide here in St. Louis that said, in effect, Emerson and UMSL are in this together to provide graduates of the Ferguson, Florissant, Normandy, Jennings, Hazelwood, Riverview Gardens, and Ritner a distinct opportunity. They wanted the whole world to know. You know what? Do you think we had a problem with their wanting the whole world to know? On the other hand, Normandy Golf Course. We have a golf course that borders up on kind of our farthest, southernmost part of our campus. And it had been on and off sale for like 10 plus years. It really came down to a very low number. And our Chancellor's Council, which is our senior most advisory group, said, we got to do something about this. And 3 of them came up with 75 grand to lock in the opportunity to purchase. And then actually one of those 3, he and his wife, he was the graduate, he's had an incredible business career, said, I want to buy it for you. And he gave us just over $1.5 million to acquire this golf course. Well, you think we were thrilled? It almost doubled the square feet of our campus. And it gave us this phenomenal asset that we're land banking, if you will, for the future. For sports fields, remain as a golf course, we have a golf team. However, it's ours, and it also protects, you could say, the southernmost flank of our university, and provides protection and stability for the neighborhoods that surround this. So we felt we needed it, the community needed it. Our Chancellor's Council came forward and did it. I couldn't wait to put John and Mary Smith, not their name, on this sign. And I brought a couple of those foam boards with the sign, and I went to see the donors, and I had their name on it, and I wanted, how do you like this? You know where I'm going. We don't, at least in this gift, because they had been recognized previously, at least in this gift, we don't want the recognition. It was like, a blow. But we accepted it, right? What else could we do? Sure. And we have maintained the strictest confidentiality about that gift. And may we always do so. He said, well, once we're dead, you can call it whatever the heck you want, Martin. I said, I'm probably going to beat you to that. I'm not going to be able to. Okay, let's go on. Catalytic volunteers. I don't know if anyone knows the name George Paz. George Paz is a graduate of our university. He's one of those not so unusual students at UMSL that took about 10 years to graduate. George came from a very humble beginnings, a Hispanic home. And both his father and mother, of course, worked as hard as they could for the children. The mother actually, much later in life, got a degree at UMSL herself. But anyway, George went on to have a meteoric career in business. Have you heard of Express Scripts? George led the quadrupling of Express Scripts to be a $100 billion company, a Fortune 25 company, our graduate. Now, unlike some graduates, George was incredibly grateful. And you can think of a man with that kind of authority, you got to be able to communicate well. So George served as a phenomenal volunteer, opening doors for us, that doors we probably would not have gotten open otherwise. And on maybe 8 to 10 calls over several years, George was truly catalytic. So we have to think about our relationships, we as volunteers. We have to think about our own story, why we're grateful for being a part of Lincoln University, what that degree, that connection has meant for us. And we need to be able to articulate that. We need to be able to articulate that. Now, storytelling versus asking. I've never asked George to ask for money. Never. We asked George to get appointments and to tell his story, which he tells so powerfully. We ask for the money. And back to one of the comments, you don't have to be an active volunteer and be asking for money. You can go on the call and introduce the university, to introduce your new president. This is a great opportunity for President Woolfolk, but a great moment for Lincoln University to highlight your new president, to get behind her, to promote her, to facilitate opportunities for her to engage with as many graduates and friends as possible in these next couple of years. I think the president would agree. Your first year, your first couple years are absolutely defining. And it's a burden on her shoulders, certainly. But it's a burden on all of your shoulders, too, to step up and think creatively and work with your president to get great things done. Get great things done. And, you know, let me, I think this is funny. I call it a solicitation gone sideways. So, this is early in my time at my first few months at UMSL, and we're out asking for money and having conversations. And we had this opportunity to go in front of this business executive from a very substantial company, a Fortune 500 company here in St. Louis. And George was not on this call, but we had two Chancellor's Council members, Chancellor George and me. We met at the Chancellor's, we always prepare. We met at the Chancellor's office a few days before. We went over all the roles each person would play. And one of the volunteers, now this is a guy who managed a $350 million company, said, well, I'll ask for the $10 million, which is the number we're going to ask for. You sure about that? Yeah. And you know, this is a business guy who's asking for deals all the time. So we get on the call. It's working like clockwork. I mean, the corporate executive is really gracious. The rapport is quickly established. Each person is doing their part. And then it came the time that we scripted. He wasn't asking. He got nervous. Well, I found out later Chancellor George was thinking the same thing I was thinking. Oh my God. What are we going to do now? I guess I'm going to have to ask him. Well, I beat the Chancellor to it. I asked him for the money and went on from there. We didn't get $10 million, by the way. We got $2.7 million as a result of that solicitation. But you know what? That organization is up to $7 million now of support for UMSL. So think about what that early solicitation did. It was catalytic, wasn't it? It produced a big result at the time. We wanted more, of course. So not every alum and volunteer has the wherewithal, and nor should we expect it. This is why we have staff. This is why we have a president, to be able to do those kinds of things on behalf of you alumni and other friends that are so engaged. Yes, sir.
I've got to ask, Chris Rice, Foundation member, did you bring that teammate back to recover on another opportunity? I mean, did you give him
Now, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure we used him again. Now, I tell you, at the end of it, he was kind of sheepish, you know. like he knew I blew it. And what I could say, and this was with authenticity, was say, John, not his name, John, but you contributed so powerfully in those other things you had to say during the course of the visit. So rather than focus on what didn't go well, let's focus on, we got the job done. Let's focus on and reassure you that what you did for us was important. Because I tell you what, for John, he was engaged in all kinds of ways for the university. We don't want to focus on this. We want John to continue to be engaged and proud of his association, because we're certainly proud to be associated with John. How we doing?
Good.
You're very patient with me. I appreciate it. Measurement helps. Measurement helps. We have to be practical. So we set annual and program and project goals. We have a capital campaign, phase 2 of a capital campaign. We need to raise another $30 million for our business college. We have a small capital campaign for our College of Nursing. We need to raise $2.5 million. We've raised about $800,000 on that campaign. On the business school, we're closer to, let's see, I guess about 7 on that project. And then we're constantly focusing on scholarships. So what our team does is we gather in July and we kind of whiteboard it. We put on the board every name we can think of that we think in the next 12 months could make a gift, again, of what I call of greater significance, and a major gift, as we define it. And from there, we kind of build out our plans in terms of how we're going to go forward. So we focus on the number of personal visits. As I said from the outset, without interpersonal engagement, you're never going to receive an extraordinary gift, or it would be rare. And we focus on proposals submitted and then proposals accepted. And many donors, as we put an aspirational number in front of them, can't reach to that or can't reach to that now, because we don't know all the complexities of their lives or how committed in the sense that they are with their resources towards our university. But accepting it, even at a smaller number, is of course vital to our growth and development and to the relationship. And then dollars raised. We set annual goals. Our goal this year is $27 million. I'll talk about that in a moment. So creating a matrix with this for the fundraisers is kind of the practical side of it. It's kind of the practical side of it. Please to the next. And this will be the last slide for part 1. If you let me back for part 2, Red, I don't know. You created a problem for me. The long view. I can't tell you how important this is, and it's going to sound maybe a little philosophical to us. The long view. A graduate of ours, graduates at 22 years of age, 25 years of age. What happens? It's like marriage. They're associated with our university, with your Lincoln University, the rest of their lives. Let's say they live to 75. How many years is that? 50 years. 50 years. If we can't get to a donor right now because they just won't allow us to, we don't know why, it doesn't mean we stop. We continue to reach out to that donor. Why? Because we have 50 years. Maybe it's year 48, maybe it's year 49. We successfully engage with the donor. And we have a long view in terms of their ability to give and how they give. And by having the long view, it mitigates the ups and downs of this work. Because we respect the person first, it's always the person first, and their philanthropy is to be an expression of their personhood, how they view reality, how they want to contribute to the greater good. We have to have a long view. I had a donor once who was very generous. This is a different organization. And he knew I was coming. I was the only one. I was coming to ask for, in fact, I think that's him on the phone. Hello. Somehow he knew I was talking about him. So anyway, he was a CFO of a smallish company, about $30–40 million a year. He was the CFO. And where do we want to meet? He said, look, I have a conference room. It'll be absolute quiet. We can do our business. And what he did was he said no. And I'm going to get to this in our next talk too. What he did is he opened up this spreadsheet. Of course, he's an accountant. He has this spreadsheet with all of the family finances over multiple years. And he pointed to this. His wife had this matter. Pointed to this adult daughter that had complex health issues. And he was already generous both to his church and to the greater our organization. But he couldn't do something now. I used to call that TMI. Too much information. But what I'm getting to is with the long view. You think that donor's not going to come around when circumstances change? Why do I know that? Because of the intimacy, the depth of the relationship. He engaged with me at a level I didn't deserve. But he did it because he loved the organization, loved the president of the organization, and wanted me, and of course, to be the voice to the leader of our organization about how much they cared.